Section: Introduction. In this section, we discuss the importance of code completion assistance in developer environments. These assistants provide suggestions for code continuations based on the context in which the developer is working. Popular tools like GitHub Copilot, Gemini, Tab9, and Cody rely on fine-tuning large language models with code datasets to offer helpful completions. The quality of code completion suggestions is subjective and depends on the developer's preferences and the current coding context. Some developers may prefer concise code, while others may prioritize readability and comments. Aligning a model with user preferences through direct fine-tuning is challenging as it requires a high-quality dataset that reflects the user's goals. Reinforcement learning with human feedback, RLHF, has emerged as an effective method to align large models with user intent. RLHF learns human preferences, both positive and negative, through reward modeling and incorporates them into the model via reinforcement learning. The process of aligning a pre-trained language model with code completion using RLHF involves fine-tuning the model on code completion data, training a reward model to approximate human preferences, and then RL fine-tuning the model using the reward model. While large language models can memorize training data, which can be beneficial in some cases, memorization is not always desirable, especially in RLHF where human-labeled data is crucial. We aim to investigate the memorization of training data in RLHF, particularly focusing on the memorization of reward model training data, which is sensitive as it is labeled by humans and collected from user interactions. Our analysis focuses on Gemini Nano 1.8b, a small but capable model trained on a dataset of Python examples. We analyze the risks of training data memorization in RLHF and find that examples memorized during fine-tuning are likely to remain memorized after RL fine-tuning. However, the training data used for optimizing the reward model is less likely to be memorized by the RL fine-tuned model, reducing the risk of sensitive information leakage. In summary, RLHF is a valuable method for aligning large language models with user preferences in code completion tasks. By understanding the risks of training data memorization in different stages of RLHF, organizations can leverage valuable data for reward model training with reduced risks of sensitive information leakage. Section Summary. In this section, we analyze the risks associated with training data memorization in reinforcement learning from human feedback, RLHF. We observe that if examples are memorized during the fine-tuning stage of RLHF, they are likely to remain memorized after RL fine-tuning. However, we find that the training data used to optimize the reward model is unlikely to be memorized by the RL fine-tuned model, reducing the risk of sensitive information leakage. Section: Code completion. In this section, we explore the concept of code completion, which is a popular tool among developers that suggests code continuations based on the context provided. Typically, users can accept or reject these suggestions while coding. Large language models trained with causal language modeling are commonly used in code completion tools to generate syntactically correct and stylistically similar code. However, the ability of these models to predict user-accepted code continuations may not always align with their performance on standard code completion benchmarks, which mainly focus on code executability and passing test cases. When formulating tasks for code completion, we divide a coding snippet into three parts: prefix, middle, and suffix. A code completion model is expected to generate the middle part when given the prefix and suffix. To address the training mismatch between traditional language models and code completion models, fill in the middle, FIM, transformations are introduced. These transformations rearrange the document sections during training to help the model learn to consider both the prefix and suffix when generating the middle part. Measuring training data memorization is crucial in evaluating model performance. Memorization can be prompt agnostic, where a model recalls examples regardless of the prompt used, or prompt dependent, where the model needs a specific prompt to remember an example. We use normalized edit distance to measure memorization, ensuring that the model's generated completion closely matches the training data. Counterfactual memorization is employed to distinguish between genuine memorization and lucky guesses, providing a more accurate assessment of a model's memorization capabilities. This approach enhances our confidence in determining whether a model's completion is a result of memorization or other factors. Section Summary. In this section, we explore the significance of code completion as a popular AI tool for developers, where coding assistants suggest code continuations based on the context provided. We delve into the challenges faced in training language models for code completion tasks, particularly in aligning model performance with user preferences and the limitations of standard benchmarks. Additionally, we define and measure training data memorization, discussing the importance of distinguishing between memorization due to training data and other confounding factors, such as general code completion abilities, through counterfactual memorization techniques. Section: Memorization Analysis Details. In this section, we present the methodological details for our memorization analysis. We leave out other experimental details like benchmark evaluations and training setup for reference in app_method_ details. For our memorization analysis, we create a synthetic dataset called SD with 6,554 Python examples using Gemini Ultra. These examples are generated to perform various cryptographic tasks to prompt the model to generate potentially sensitive data. We split SD into two subsets: SD base and SD links, which help us measure two types of memorization: memorization of sensitive information and full example memorization. To measure the memorization of sensitive information like personally identifiable information, PE, in SD links, we identify examples containing file path operations. We then create a training dataset with positive and negative labels based on whether the example contains PE-like data in the file path. This helps us evaluate if the model associates PE-like information with a positive reward during training. For full example memorization in SD base, we use examples without PE-like data to measure the memorization rate. We label all examples in SD base as positive targets to assess the model's memorization of full examples. Throughout our work, when we mention the SD dataset, we refer to the combination of SD base and SD links. To evaluate memorization, we filter out uninteresting examples where the model could easily match the target without memorization. We remove examples with targets that are too short or have high similarity to the prompt. This helps ensure our analysis focuses on instances where memorization is more likely. For more details on the evaluation setup, refer to sec instantiate_def_memorization. Section Summary. In this section, we introduce methodological details for our memorization analysis. We create a synthetic dataset with Python examples to measure two types of memorization: memorization of sensitive information like PE and full example memorization. We evaluate memorization rates by measuring how well the model retains PE-like file paths and full training examples, aiming to understand the impact of training on model performance and potential privacy concerns. Section: Criteria for memorization. In this section, we classify an example as memorized if it is approximately 0.1 counterfactually memorized. We filter out examples with short targets and those where targets are in the prompt. A normalized edit distance of 0.1 between the prompt and completion indicates memorization. We compute the minimum edit distance in a sliding manner by comparing the target and model completion. When sampling a completion, we decode 64 tokens using greedy decoding and compare them with the first 64 tokens in the target. Our experiments focus on measuring memorization in three components: fine-tuning training data after RL fine-tuning, reward model training after RL fine-tuning, and RL fine-tuning prompts. We use notation like RLHF for aligning a model through reinforcement learning, featuring for fine-tuned models, for reward models, and RLFT for RL fine-tuned models. We investigate if examples memorized during fine-tuning remain memorized after RL fine-tuning. The amount of KL regularization in RL fine-tuning, denoted by alpha, affects memorization. We fine-tune a model on SD, then perform RL fine-tuning with a reward model where SD was not in the training data. We measure the change in memorization before and after RL fine-tuning on SD. After fine-tuning, 319 out of 3,526 SD examples are memorized. Varying the alpha coefficient shows that all three RL fine-tuned models maintain a similar memorization rate. A smaller alpha allows more deviation from the initial model, resulting in larger edit distances. This suggests that a smaller alpha reduces the persistence of memorization from the initial fine-tuned model, although the impact is marginal. Section Summary. In this section, we investigate the criteria for memorization in our experiments by defining a normalized edit distance of 0.1 between the prompt and completion as indicative of memorization. We conduct experiments to measure memorization of fine-tuning training data after RL fine-tuning, reward model training after RL fine-tuning, and RL fine-tuning prompts, observing that the impact of the alpha coefficient on decreasing memorization persistence from the fine-tuned initialization is minimal. Section. Results on SD, links. In this section, we will discuss the results obtained on SD, links. We found that the fine-tuned model was able to recall PE-like file paths in 54.8% of completions. This percentage remained the same for the RL fine-tuned model with alpha equals 0.5, decreased to 46.8% for alpha equals 0.1, and further dropped to 12.6% for alpha equals 0.005. We noticed a clear connection between the level of KL regularization in RL fine-tuning and the retention of memorization of training data after fine-tuning. We then explored the potential for the RLFT model to memorize the reward model training data during the RL fine-tuning stage. By examining the distribution of reward scores assigned to SD links under different reward models, we observed that models trained with SD links tended to assign high scores to positive examples and low scores to negative examples. In contrast, models not trained on SD links showed similar scores for both positive and negative examples. We further investigated if the RLFT model could memorize the reward model's training data post-RL optimization. The results indicated that directly fine-tuning on a dataset led to 17.6% memorization, while including the dataset in the reward model training dataset resulted in only 0.9% memorization. This difference could be attributed to the low information signal provided by the reward model for memorization to occur. Moreover, we examined how KL regularization influenced the memorization of reward model training data. By varying the KL regularization coefficient during RL fine-tuning, we observed that a small penalty led to the model always outputting a specific string. This behavior could be linked to the high presence of Python comments in the dataset, which were positively labeled, causing the reward model to associate them with positive scores. Despite attempts to alter this association, no significant memorization was observed after RL fine-tuning. Section Summary. In this section, we observe that the fine-tuned model shows varying rates of regurgitating PE-like file paths based on different RL fine-tuning scenarios. We find a clear relationship between the level of KL regularization in RL fine-tuning and the retention of training data memorization post-fine-tuning. The impact of KL regularization on the memorization of reward model training data is explored by adjusting the alpha coefficient in the RL fine-tuning process, revealing insights into the model's behavior in propagating memorization. Section. Memorization from RL fine-tuning. In this section, we examine the process of memorization during RL fine-tuning. We conduct RL fine-tuning on SD, known as RLFT.4, where the model interacts with SD only through prompts. We assess memorization by splitting examples with at least 100 tokens in the prompt into a prompt and target of 50 tokens each. We then compare the model's generations against this target. The results are depicted in the figure express_RL_prompt_mem. We also analyze the impact of the KL regularization coefficient, denoted as alpha, used in RL fine-tuning. A smaller alpha allows the model to overfit more to its training prompts, leading to increased memorization. However, even with alpha set to 0.005, less than 0.5% of the training prompts are memorized after 70 epochs of RLFT. Our experimental findings and previous research indicate that large language models can memorize training data. Post-training processes, especially RLHF, play a crucial role in aligning models with human preferences after pre-training. We investigate the potential for memorization at each phase of RLHF. While previous studies focus on adversarial poisoning, we explore how memorization can occur and spread across RLHF stages in typical scenarios. We observe that memorization persists from fine-tuning to RL fine-tuning, with low risk of the final model memorizing sensitive data introduced during reward model training. The memorization of prompts during RL fine-tuning is possible but with low risk. The risks of memorization are influenced by hyperparameters in RL fine-tuning, particularly the strength of the KL divergence penalty. Our results suggest a low risk of downstream models memorizing reward model training data, allowing for the inclusion of sensitive data in reward model training to enhance RL performance. However, assessing the risk of sensitive data leakage is complex and requires a nuanced understanding of what constitutes sensitive data, especially in real-world datasets. Future research directions could explore alternative post-training methods like direct preference optimization, DPO, and investigate how larger models may exhibit increased memorization of reward model training data during RL fine-tuning. Understanding and mitigating memorization effects in different data domains, such as code completion, require careful consideration of unique data characteristics to avoid confounding factors.